There you go. So wanted to start it off chapter 2 with some introduction first before we go into the chapter. It's one of the most important, almost all 700 slokas. I don't think there is anything Bhagavan would tell us if it's not important. So while all 700 slokas are super important, this one serves, as my Guruji always used to say, as the headlines, the first page of the newspaper. It serves as the headlines, and then you will see for the rest of the story, read page 2 or go to page 5, and then you will see most of the topics being expanded in the next set of topics. So this one is very important. The other part of it, as once Bhagavan starts speaking, as soon as the first sloka after Arjuna surrenders to Bhagavan and says, "You are the Guru, I am the Sishya," the first sloka onwards, from sloka 11 to sloka 25, Bhagavan directly, without further ado, he just imparts Brahma Jnanam and doesn't just beat around the bush. He goes directly into the topic. So we are about to go into Brahma Jnanam in about 10 slokas. So we'll do a bit of introduction of what this chapter is, kind of what the layout of the chapter is first, and then what each of those topics really mean. I would appreciate if you can just note down those sloka numbers and what we are about to see, because it will help you give a nice format or layout of what you're about to see. And when we get to those slokas, I'll continue to remind what we are about to go into. But it will also serve if you're making notes. And I actually would think that this is the chapter in your books or in your app. If there is a way to highlight, keep doing that, because there are quite a few amazing points that you will see. There are beautiful analogies that will come and lots of practical steps that Bhagavan will be talking about. So pay a lot of attention. If you happen to miss the call, make sure you're listening to the recording, or at least do the reading and catch up for the next week, because every sloka in this chapter is very, very important. So the chapter is called Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. So in this one, there are four main topics, and the first 10 slokas, sloka 1 to 10, is Arjuna Sharanagati. That's what will happen. From sloka 11 to 38, Bhagavan teaches Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. From slokas 39 to 53, we will learn about Karma Yoga. And from sloka 54 to 72, after Bhagavan starts speaking from sloka 11 until 53, there's Arjuna doesn't have any question. So sloka 54 is Arjuna's question about who is a Sthita Prajna, what do they how do they walk, how do they eat, is the kind of nice question that he asks. And Bhagavan explains what is Sthita Prajnatvam from slokas 55 to 72. Basically, from 54 to 72, it's about Sthita Prajnatvam, the upayas or the sadhanas that go with it, and Sthita Prajna Lakshanas. So very important chapter. I hope everybody got that split of the four essential parts that we are about to go through. With that context, I also want to just go into each of these topics very briefly. So I may take about 5 or 6 minutes to walk you through, give you some of the context, and then we'll go and start reading verse 1. In first chapter, we have seen that Arjuna was shown to be completely immersed in grief. He was going first, he was into raga, then shoka, then moha. And then independently, he was analyzing the problem and he was coming to conclusions. And his conclusion at the end was to withdraw from the war and go and just pursue Jnana Yoga. He wants to go into take sannyasa. He doesn't use that word, but he says he wants to quit the war. In the beginning of the second chapter, we see the turning point in Arjuna. And how does that happen? Krishna actually prods him, chastises him in slokas 2 and 3 of chapter 2. When then Arjuna analyzes the situation a little further, which leads him to have two important discoveries. One is His weakness of attachment is a fundamental problem which cannot be solved by superficial methods he was trying in chapter 1. And the second discovery is that he has to surrender completely to a guru to get out of this fundamental problem. So once these two discoveries happen, Arjuna then becomes a Sishya by surrendering to Lord Krishna. Naturally, Krishna also becomes from a charioteer to Guru. And now that the Guru Sishya relationship has been struck, the teaching will begin. One of the important key pieces here for us to understand in our worlds as well, once a human being discovers the seeker in him, we are all seeking something, and we have talked about this in the past as in some of the previous classes as well. We are all seeking something, and that seeking could be materialistic seeking. That seeking could be, oh, I want a better job, or I want, as my guruji used to say, some people are seeking to get married, and some other people, and they think, by getting married they will be happy, but there are so many other people who are trying to get divorced, and they think by divorcing they'll be happy. So what we are seeking at any given point will change, but ultimately what we are seeking, the happiness, that will not change. But as soon as the person discovers the seeker in him, that it is not the car or the marriage or the money or the job that he's seeking, the ultimate seeking is something different, something beyond all of this, then the guru will appear right in front of us. As if God sent, suddenly you will have somebody, uh, and this happens to everybody, and in my personal life, that is so, so true. So the Vedantic teaching then takes place only between that guru and Sishya, and that's when things get uh, what I would say in multifold ways, in multi-dimensional learning starts to happen when that bond is created. So Krishna straight away, without any further, beating around the bush, without further ado, he just starts off with attacking Arjuna's idea that the war is going to harm Bhishma or himself, all of those points. He points out that all of those problems of Arjuna are because of delusion caused by ignorance, because wise people don't face such a situation. And he uses the term panditaha in that sloka. When we get there, we will see it. And thereafter, Krishna gives different reasons to establish that Arjuna has to fight this war. And how does he explain it? He explains it extremely logically and very, each of those slokas, like a string of slokas that will help us understand, and he nicely unveils things for us. So the first one reason that he gives is called as the Adhyatmika Drishti. You will not see the specific term in Gita, but that is the term because he is now going into Brahma Jnanam and he's explaining about Atma and the permanency of Atma, the Sanatanatvam of Atma. That is the Adhyatmika Drishti that happens between slokas 12 to 25. And he extends that to a little bit of, because of the permanency of Atma, he also takes the point of Sharirakam and why Shariram is impermanent or the body is impermanent. And he explains that from 26 to 30. So that's where we will see the full Jnana Yoga unfold. The next one he explains from slokas 30 to 33, where we will see the Dharmika Drishti. As a Kshatriya, what is Arjuna's duty and why he should fight, what is his dharma, is explained from 30 to 33. The next set of explanation he'll give, which is the last explanation or last reasoning, is Laukika Drishti. Looking at a situation from a worldly angle, if Arjuna withdrew from the war, he'll be called a coward, and that will just spoil his reputation and that sort of stuff. That will happen between slokas 34 and 36. So within the first set that we talked about, from 11 to 38, these are the three things that unfold. Then, as we talked about, karma yoga is the next facet that comes into picture. Uh, though Sankhya yoga is a true solution for sorrow, many are not fit to go into Sankhya yoga. At some point, we talked about. Sorry, one second. I'm going to decline this. We've previously talked about adhikaritvam, right? People and how ready they are for Brahma Yoga. It's not for everybody. So there is a Uttama Adhikari, there is a Madhyama Adhikari, there is a Adhama Adhikari, and this gets explained in multiple Upanishads on what those characteristics are. Depending on how ready the person is for gaining this Brahma Jnanam, the Uttamadhikaris can immediately get it and they don't need to go through any other preparatory processes. But if somebody needs more eligibility criteria based on how raga, shoka, and moha, or how attached they are to things in their lives, depending on that, there is a requirement for doing some karma yoga, and through karma yoga they will attain sankhya yoga. So Bhagavan here nicely beautifully takes from his, he teaches the more uttamadhikari part first, and we will go into the depth of atma jnanam during that study. Swamiji very beautifully explains each of those pieces, and we will get, I'll actually bring in from sloka 11, if I mentioned it before. Shankaracharya has written the bhasyam from sloka 11. So once we get there, I'll be actually referring to quotes directly from Shankara Bhashyam in Sanskritam, and I'll explain that as additional material that we can refer to. But Karma Yoga is very beautifully explained. And then talking about the last part will be Sankhya, Sthita Prajnatvam. And Arjuna becomes curious at that point and he wants to know the characteristics of a person who is firmly established in self knowledge. And he asks the question. And here, Krishna, um, knowledge cannot be fruitful unless somebody it is established and assimilated. Therefore, Krishna gives us some beautiful practices, sadhanas, in between shlokas 54 and 68. And there are some more additional things that he will help understand to conclude the chapter for after 72 slokas. And that's when we'll move into Karma Yoga as chapter 3. But we will take some time going through chapter 2 because it's very important for us to understand this. So we will not rush through this, especially from sloka 11 onwards. With that context, unless there are any questions, thoughts, feedback, anything that you want to discuss, we can move to sloka 1.
Just have not a question, but the Chitta Prajna Yajna, that is it a phase of self-realization? No.
It's not
Because
a phase of, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Because you said that Bhagavan describes uh, the he describes from the point of view of having attained that. No?
So Sthita Prajna is somebody who is firmly established in self-knowledge, what the attitude that he presents himself with is Sthita Prajnatvam.
Oh, okay. Okay, because every theory that is the highest realization is self-realization, right?
Correct, exactly.
So that attitude, that means it's so wonderful there.
Yes, exactly. So the difference is, and there is a beautiful, there are multiple siddhi yogas and things like that that our gurus have given us. So Shankaracharya has written Aparokshanubhuti and the Paroksha Aparokshanubhuti, and there are quite a Vichara Sagaram is one other beautiful book that I listen to. Um, what it is there are two facets to it. One is understanding the Jnana Yoga itself requires lots of eligibility criteria. You can intellectually understand it, but you still have to do so much sadhana in order to establish yourself in that knowledge 24/7 and 365. That is not an easy thing to do, especially when we live in worldly lives, right? And we also have to understand that in olden days, where somebody used to go, live his life, go through brahmacharya ashrama, go to grihastha ashrama, and then do vanaprastham. And at some point, they understand what's going on, and they want to go get self-realization, and they leave everything, give up all their possessions, and walk out into the woods and find somebody in the forest that can give them the jnana. For that person, there is not much of laukikam or materialistic things that are happening. We are in an age where we are grihasthas. We absolutely have to pay, pay our bills, take care of our families, do all of this stuff, and we go through a lot of things, right? In this angle, how are we going to continue to maintain the self knowledge that we will maintain? That sthita prajnatvam is one major part of it. The way my Guruji would have explained it to us is the movie is going on the movie is running, but the screen behind it doesn't get tainted with it, doesn't get scarred with it. The screen itself is stable and is absolutely protected from whatever is going on the movie. There could be an emotional scene, there could be fighting, there could be whatever, but the screen itself has nothing to do with it. So how do we continue to differentiate ourselves, the atma versus the shariram, the mind, the manas, the family, and everything else is outside of this atma? How do we maintain ourselves or firmly establish ourselves in that brahma jnanam is what is the most important thing. Intellectual understanding is not easy, but I would say it is not the most difficult one. Firmly maintaining that, establishing it forever is the more difficult part of the sadhana. Did that answer your question, Padmaji? Any other questions, thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Because I'm always relating to so many things in the daily life, like you see Maslow's theory of hierarchy.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I like to see those connections and look at it. So
Yeah,
it helps me understand. Thank you so much.
absolutely. And I bring up Maslow's theory of hierarchy so many times. You will hear me say that.
Would love it.
Yes, we all think alike.
Vijay, can you please repeat the two discoveries of the weaknesses?
Sure, absolutely. So the first discovery is that he is in, sorry, one second. I have my notes that I was reading from, so I'll just read it so I don't.
I wrote it. I think you said
Yeah,
the weakness of
correct.
attachment and completely surrender.
Correct. His weakness of attachment is the fundamental problem. The second one is surrendering completely to a guru.
Thank you.
Okay. With that context, who would like to get us started with chapter 2?
I can start.
Please go ahead.
सञ्जयोवाच तं तथा कृपयाविष्टम् अश्रुपूर्णकुलेक्षणं विषीदन्तमिदं वाक्यम् उवाच मधुसूदनः. सञ्जयोवाच. Sanjaya said, Madhusudana, Krishna, Tatha, thus, Kripaya, Avishtam, overwhelmed by compassion, Ashrupurna Akula Ikshanam, whose eyes are filled with tears and showed distress. Vishidantam, one who was sad, tam, to him, idam, this, vakyam, sentence, uvacha, spoke. Sanjaya said, to him who was thus sad and overwhelmed by compassion, whose eyes were filled with tears and showed distress, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke these words. The use of the third person in this verse reminds us that Sanjaya, the narrator of the Gita, was continuing his report to Dhritarashtra. The dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna, on the other hand, is always in the first person and the second person. As the second chapter begins, Krishna, referred to as Madhusudana, had been patiently listening to Arjuna because he knew the importance of listening. He let Arjuna talk. A therapist also listens a lot and nods his or her head at the appropriate time, speaking only enough to keep the person talking. People do not generally listen in this way. They begin advising right away and do not know how to listen. Krishna was a good listener. He had already listened to one complete chapter. Only when Arjuna laid down his bow, arrows, and sat back in the chariot did Krishna think it was time for him to respond. The word Madhu in the name Madhusudana refers to the ego. It means honey, something that is very dear, very sweet to us. The Ahankara, ego, is very dear to us. Everyone wants to boost the Ahankara. No one wants to give it up. We have already seen that Madhusudana refers to Krishna as the destroyer of demons. The ego here can be seen as a demon. Therefore, the one whose grace destroys Ahankara, the one knowing whom the Ahankara is destroyed, is called Madhusudana. Arjuna was described as being overwhelmed, overpowered by sympathy, compassion, and affection. His eyes were filled with tears because he had placed himself in such a situation. There was more here than mere compassion. There was conflict too because of his sense of duty. Arjuna was confused about having to destroy people who were his gurus and relatives. Because he was a man of discipline, Arjuna did not allow the tears to flow. There are three reasons why the eyes can be filled with tears. Pepper can certainly do it. When you are ecstatic, also, you may shed tears. When you're sad, the tears can well up. Any disease causing tears is usually due to irritation and is therefore covered under the first of these three. Thus, the tear glands are stimulated by these kinds of situations. We know that Arjuna's tears were not due to ecstasy because he was described here as one who was sad. Arjuna, who was sad, whose eyes were glistening with tears, and whose heart was overwhelmed by compassion, was being addressed by Sri Bhagavan. The word Vakya usually means a sentence, a group of words. Here, it refers to the whole subject matter of this particular section.
Awesome. Remember last week we were talking about the Nama Madhusudana, and I was saying people who have been named as Madhusudana, I've known their families calling them Madhu, and I was saying please call them Madhusudana. So it's important to highlight the Nama and the description of why that is so. Madhu means Ahankara, something that needs to be killed, and we shouldn't be calling that person Madhu. It should be Madhusudana. Okay, so we'll go to Sloka 2. Who would like to go and read Sloka 2? Should somebody be voluntold?
Okay, I can do it. This is Ratna.
Please go ahead, Ratnaji.
Shri Bhagavan Kutasva Kashmalamitham Vishme Samuparistitam Anarya Chushta Masvargyamak Kirti Karama Arjuna.
Yeah, so you can actually break it after Kashmalamidam. So it'll be Kutastva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samupasthitam Anaryajushtamasvargyam Akirtikaram Arjuna.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha. That is, Shri Bhagavan said, Arjuna, O Arjuna, Vishame, in this crisis, idam, this, anarya, chushtam, that which is not becoming of an upright man, asvargayam, that which is not the means to gain heaven, akirti karam, that which does not add to your good name, kasmalam, despair, upon you, kritaha, from where samupastitam has come. Sri Bhagavan said, in such crisis, from where has this despair come upon you, O Arjuna? Can you? Yeah. It is not at all becoming of an upright man and does not add to your good name, nor is it which leads one to heaven. Hey Arjuna, where do you pick up this despair, this sorrow? Asked Krishna. Arjuna had been talking in a way that did not sound like him at all. Because it was totally unexpected, Krishna's response did not take the form of helpful advice. He did not let Arjuna know that he understood his position and the difficulties he was facing. Instead, He whipped him with his tongue. Where did this despair come from, Arjuna? It does not befit you at all, he said. To expand Krishna's words, you have missed your calling, Arjuna. You should have been a great actor. How could you have hidden this from me all these years? I never expected that you could get into this kind of a state. We all knew you to be a bravest, the most courageous, and now I hear your talk that betrays only sorrow. Sorrow at the thought of the imminent destruction that this war will bring. It may have been all right if you had mentioned all this before we came to the battlefield. We could have sat down and discussed it, but we cannot do that here. This is both the wrong time and the wrong place. Thus Krishna admonished Arjuna. This was when that Arjuna should have been spending his time on the strategies of the war, such as deciding with whom he should fight and how to proceed, etc. He was in the battlefield, standing in the midst of the two armies, having requested Krishna to be his driver. Krishna had fulfilled his end of the bargain, but now it looked as though he had backed a horse that would not even start. Not only are you sick, Arjuna, Krishna went on, but you have made me also sick. This is a time for brave deeds, not for this kind of. Can you raise it?
Yeah, absolutely. Where is it?
Okay, not for this kind of lamenting. This is neither the time nor the place for such talk. Krishna therefore demanded to know where all these had come from. The verse contains three adjectives describing Arjuna's despair: Anyarya Husta,
Ar- Anarya Jushtam.
Anarya Justa, Asvargya, and Akirtikara. Anarya Justa derives its meaning from Arya, meaning an upright man, one who does the right thing at the appropriate time. Arjuna was reminded by Krishna that he had always been an Arya, a man who did what was to be done. From such a man, despair is not expected. Therefore, this behavior is Anarya Justa, not befitting or becoming an Arya. It is not that an Arya does not cry. He will cry when the occasion warrants it, but not in the battlefield where he has to act. Thus, Krishna told Arjuna that his despair, his wailing and lamentations here in the battlefield were totally inappropriate. An Arya Husta not becoming at all.
Ratnaji, can I just interrupt you for one quick second? I want to ask if everybody knows that the whole Aryan invasion and the division between Aryans and Dravidians is all fake and it's been proved. So the Arya that is being used here is not that Arya. That was just a manipulation of what was in Vedas. We do have the term Arya then, that Europeans have used it for their own purpose and politicized it. But this Arya actually means noble men, and it has nothing to do with that whole crazy invasion theory. Okay,
Yeah, it means upright man,
correct.
right? I mean, anybody who is in his life upright about everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Krishna also told him that what he was contemplating was asvargya, not the way to heaven. Arjuna had said that he had heard that people who destroy the family and thereby the dharma would live in hell, naraka, an abode of pain, for a certain length of time. He therefore thought that by doing his duty of fighting this war, he would go to naraka, and that by not doing it, by retreating, he would go to heaven, Swarga. He was therefore prepared to sacrifice everything and go to Swarga. Krishna was now telling him that if this were to be his thinking, it would not work. Not fighting would amount to a dereliction of duty because he was supposed to protect the law and order of the kingdom. Therefore, when he talked like this, it was asvargya. Krishna also told him in a later verse that in addition to living with sorrow and privations due to not having a kingdom, this dereliction of duty would gnaw at his heart. Furthermore, when he died, he would go only to Naraka and not to Swarga. To this, Arjuna might have said that he did not care about going to heaven. He did not even know if there was a heaven or a hell. Being cornered, he might have said that all he cared about was the here and now. If this were Arjuna's thinking, Krishna tells him that it would prove to be a kirti kara. Did I read it correctly?
Yeah, Akirtikara. Yeah.
Yeah, a disgrace even in this life. He says, this sorrow leading to your running away from the battlefield is not going to rebound to your credit in the society. People are going to look at you and say, that is Arjuna, the one who ran away from the battlefield. If you go to Rishikesh and sit under a tree, pilgrims will come to see you before going to the Ganges, saying, I want to see Arjuna, the fellow who ran away from the battlefield. Everyone will talk lightly of you. He might have said further, they will say, how great was Arjuna, how courageous he was. He was the master archer until the battle began. Nobody is going to give you any credit for such an action, Arjuna. Krishna may then have said, not only will they talk lightly of you, they will criticize and belittle all your powers and prowess. Even ordinary people will talk ill of you. If you run away from the battlefield, Dharmaputra, your older brother, crestfallen, will follow you. Bhima, of course, will be angry. But being helpless, he too will go away. The whole army will fizzle out. Everyone will leave, and some may even heave a sigh of I lost my.
It's here. It's here.
Okay, may even even a sigh of relief that they have escaped. Everyone in Arjuna's ranks was afraid of Bhishma and Drona, and those in the opposite camp were afraid of Arjuna and Bhima. They would all be greatly relieved. The Pandavas, along with their entire army, would be gone, and Duryodhana would be handed the victory on a platter. He would be able to say, hands down, without a shot, I won. Krishna would therefore have admonished Arjuna even further. After you have gone to the forest, what will Duryodhana do? There will be parties everywhere. Duryodhana will let the entire army drink as much as it wants, much more than a happy hour. It'll be a happy day because the media is with him. Duryodhana will see to it that people think you are a coward. He will say that Arjuna asked Krishna to station his chariot in such a way that he could see Duryodhana's army, and seeing it, he ran away in fear. The headlines will read, Arjuna saw, shivered, and ran. There will even be photographs of you running away. Of course, Krishna may have continued. Duryodhana will present it in the worst possible light because Duryodhana cannot afford to have citizen looking up at Arjuna as a man of sacrifice. He will belittle you.
On the top here, Arjuna.
Okay, Arjuna. Okay, I'm missing one. Okay. Even though he knows in his heart that your sacrifice was due only to compassion for the people, to save their families and so on, he will not allow anyone to know that. He will cover it all up, saying that you ran away out of sheer fear for your precious life. Duryodhana will not be the only one to present it this way. The ordinary soldiers who normally had nightmares about Arjuna, those who had been so afraid of him, Those who were recruited only a few days ago will also talk like this. Over drinks, one will boast to others that Krishna stopped Arjuna's chariot right in front of him. And when Arjuna's eyes fell upon him, all he did was twist his mustache, give him that special look, and Arjuna ran away in terror. Who will not tell such stories? Not only the great warriors, but also yesterday's recruits will talk like this. People will talk so ill of you, Arjuna, that it will be impossible for you to be happy in this world. This then was what Krishna meant by Akirtikara. Krishna would have also reminded Arjuna of the many wonderful titles that had been lavished upon him over the years. He was a role model for every soldier, and now he was thinking of running away. This would be something like a Nobel laureate who, having been honored for the great work he had done for the downtrodden, the poor, and the ill of the society, is found to have committed a multiple murder for the sake of money. This news, of course, would blare out from the headlines of all the newspapers. The Nobel laureates of the world will then immediately surrender their scrolls because the Nobel Prize will no longer have any meaning. This was exactly what happened when a group of rock singers was knighted. One of the old knights surrendered his knighthood because he did not want to be in the same ranks as these young singers. Therefore, Arjuna, your name, fame, credibility, and everything will be destroyed. Krishna tells Arjuna. Kirtikara means that which adds to your name. A Kirtikara is that which does not add to one's credit at all. Your sorrow, Arjuna, is a Kirtikara. I see the seed for all further reactions, says Krishna. Arjuna had already dropped his bow and arrows and sat down. Krishna therefore had to tell Arjuna that his thinking was confused and that he should get up and do what had to be done.
Awesome. We'll just take a minute to unfold this a little bit. So there are three terms that were used by Krishna: Anarya Jushtam, Asvargyam, Akirtikaram. So Anarya Jushtam is somebody who is an upright person, like Arya Jushtam would be his upright person. Anarya Jushtam is somebody who is not upright, so who is not dharmic, right? So first, what Bhagavan is saying is you have to take dharma into consideration. One second. So, and then the next term is asvargyam, which is about paralaukikam, or more of security. So here, the second order, pay attention to the order that he is going in. So Swargam is second in order than Dharma itself. So first comes Dharma, second you can think about Swarga. And the last one is Akirtikaram, which is the reputation, or more Laukikam, which is the Dharma, Artha, Kama, and then Moksha he will talk about, once only after Arjuna considers himself Guru. And that's when the Moksha Shastra will come. But here he's talking about, take it in the sequence of Dharma, Artha, Kama. And generally when we make our decisions, we keep doing it in the reverse order. Is it good for me? Is it bringing me security? Is it giving me reputation? And then is it dharmic? So he is trying to flip that thinking process. If we are doing it in the reverse order, make sure you're thinking if it is dharma or not, and that whether it gives you reputation or not, whether it gives you swargam or not, is a secondary thing or a tertiary thing. But the primary concept is whether you are doing your activities in a dharmic way. So that's an important thing for us to in our own sadhanas. So we'll move to sloka 3. Who would like to read this one? Oops.
I can try.
Please go ahead.
क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्तेयुपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप O vanquisher of enemies, Partha or Arjuna, Klaibyam, unmanliness, Masma Gamaha, do not yield to, Etat, this, Nat Tvayi Upadyate, does not befit you, Shudram, lowly, Hridaya Daurbalyam, weakness of heart, Tyaktva, giving up, Uttishta, please get up. O Partha, the vanquisher of enemies, do not yield to unmanliness. This does not befit you. Give up this lowly weakness of heart and get up. By calling Arjuna as Partha, the son of Pritha, Krishna was saying, this is definitely not the time for behaving like a child, a mama's boy. Krishna also used the word Klaibya, meaning one who is neither male nor female. In other words, the mental state of a eunuch. Men fight in a certain way, and when women have to fight, they too fight in a way that's peculiar to them. Eunuchs, on the other hand, are a problem in any society because they are in between, neither man nor woman. Krishna advised Arjuna against that state. Do not proceed in this way. Do not let this emotion take you over. Klaibyam ma sma gamaha. Arjuna was known to be a man of great discipline, perseverance, dexterity, and skill, and therefore this thinking like a Klaiba
Kliba.
did not fit him at all. He was a soldier, and as Krishna said, it was his duty not to talk in this way. More than a soldier, he was a Kshatriya who was supposed to protect Dharma. By birth, he had had his duty enjoined upon him. In addition, because he was a prince, he had to set an example. Nor was he an ordinary prince, he was the most exalted among princes. There was no one like him in this kingdom or elsewhere. He was the role model. Whatever he did, others would follow. You are a role model, Arjuna, a leader. You are not a sadhu. You are not a dropout, a hobo who can do as he likes. You are a responsible person and what is more, a leader. You are one of the 5 crowned princes, and your older brother is supposed to rule. You are committed to doing what is to be done, and there is no escape. To run away is not fitting for any soldier, and for you, Arjuna, it's definitely not fitting, says Krishna.
See here?
Therefore, Krishna continued, giving up, being overcome by emotional weakness at this time, Arjuna, is base and lowly. Please get up. Although he addressed him politely, Krishna ordered Arjuna up. In fact, in the first line of this verse, he called him Partha, and then, to remind him who he was, he called Parantapa, the one who destroys the enemy. Don't run away, he said. Get up and face the battle. Krishna told Arjuna to do what had to be done. For Arjuna, it happened to be a battle. The whole Gita is going to point out that what is to be done must be done, unless one is a sannyasi. Doing what is to be done can be yoga, requiring only a change of attitude on your part. Thus, this part of the Gita is a setup for the whole dharma that is to be unfolded, the seed for what is to come later in terms of karma yoga. Being ordered to get up in this way, Arjuna felt that he was not understood, much less was his sympathy understood. He then began again to explain himself. So much respect did he have for Krishna. Krishna's admonitions were not meant as criticisms, but were only to show Arjuna that a particular type of thinking led to his sorrow, and now he should change his thinking. Sympathy for others is a virtue, but what is to be done has to be done. The whole teaching is about another type of thinking, and Arjuna's thinking process was triggered off by Krishna's whipping words, as evidenced by his reply.
Awesome. We have noticed what kind of words Bhagavan is using, and he will use those kind of chiding words throughout Gita. actually at some point was crazy enough to go do a little bit of research. Just what are some of the words? At some point, he'll call somebody a thief. Indira Rama, Indra Rama. There are so many words that he uses. Here, he's using the terms klaibya, kshudram, hridaya daurbalyam. What could be worse to say, like, whipping him as if, like, get up, tyaktva uttishta. He's giving an order, just leave all of those uh, characteristics that you're currently displaying and get up and get to fight. It's an important sloka my Guruji used to say. When you're feeling personally that you're not able to do a certain activity and you're not able to commit yourself to certain things, and he used to give an example of um, if you had some practices that you want to do very early in the morning, and if you think you're not able to practice it, and if you're not able to wake up in the morning, he used to give simple examples like that. Just remind yourself what Bhagavan would have called you if you said, yeah, you know what, I'm going to be lazy, I don't want to do it, I want to quit on this, I can't achieve this, or I can't do this exam. Remember what kind of words Bhagavan would have used. So, Klaibhyam masmagamah partha naitatva yupapadyate kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktva uttishta parantapa. So important to remember each of those terminologies, and we need some of that chiding sometimes, right? Okay, we'll move to sloka 4. Who would like to read this one?
Can I do it?
Please go ahead, of course.
Arjuna Vacha Katam Bhishmam Aham Sankhe. Wait. Arjuna Vacha Katam Bhishmaham Sankhe
Katam
Dronam.
bhishmamaham sankhe.
Dronam cha Madhusudana Ishubi Pratisyot Patiyosyami Pujarhavari Sudana.
Awesome. Is that Pranati?
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Very well done.
Arjuna Uvacha said, Arisudana, O destroyer of foes, Krishna. Madhusudana, O destroyer of the demon Madhu. Aham, I, Sankhya, in this battle, Puja Araho, these two who are worthy of worship, Bhishmam, Bhishma, Dronam, Drona, Cha, and Ishubi, with arrows, Katam, how, Pratiyotsyami, will fight against. Arjuna said, O destroyer of foes, O destroyer of the demon Madhu, O Krishna, how will I in this battle fight with arrows against Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship? In this verse, Arjuna said what amounted to, you cannot understand what I am saying. You cannot appreciate where I am coming from. I have been placed in a very
Unenviable.
unenviable situation. I have to fight, and I am quite accustomed to that. That I have to fight against people known to me is also not the real problem. I probably could manage to fight against my own people. But how can I fight against these two stalwarts, Bhishma and Drona, for whom I have been
Sorry about that.
for whom I have such great reverence, to whom I owe everything? By addressing Krishna as Madhusudana and Arisudana, Arjuna was reminding Krishna that he had destroyed only demons and enemies, not his teachers and family. But those whom Arjuna was now supposed to destroy were his gurus, who deserved only worship from him. Instead of weapons, he should have brought flowers and have been making garlands to offer them. Drona was the one from whom he had learned the art of archery. He had grown up on Bhishma's lap and learned everything he knew from him. Bhishma was Arjuna's role model, his inspiration, idol, and hero. How can I use my arrows against these two men? He asked. Arjuna could also talk the way Krishna was talking. He too could deliver a pep talk and tell others that they should behave like men and do what had to be done. but Bhishma and Drona were two people for whom he had the greatest respect, which they deserved, and Arjuna did not think he could destroy them. And this thinking is what led him to ask Krishna to teach him what was right. The process of Arjuna's thinking is revealed in these verses very beautifully. The Gita still has not begun. Krishna's advice to get up was that of a friend. What Arjuna intended to do was not going to take him to heaven, much less add to his credit, and Krishna told him so. Everything else Krishna was saying was just to boost Arjuna's morale. Naturally, Arjuna was surprised that Krishna was saying things like, "Don't get into this Enoch-like state," and so on, since he was not accustomed to being spoken to as a weakling. Given the words he used, Krishna seemed to be thinking of Arjuna as a coward, someone who had to be told to get up and do what had to be done. Arjuna had never heard such words in his lifetime, and certainly never expected to hear them from Krishna of all people. Therefore, he wanted to counter all of Bhagavan's statements. Therefore, he said, "It is easy for you to tell me not to have this weakness. However, the problem here for me is not fear. That is not why I want to leave the battlefield. I want to leave because of compassion and my concept of dharma, which holds that dharma can be protected only by protecting the dharmis. The only way I can win this war is by destroying all the dharmis. Therefore, none of this makes any sense." The problem was something
Sorry,
like
let
that
me
of a
just
student
scroll
who
it
wants
up.
to protect his guru from a fly that was bothering him while he slept. He took a big stone and killed the fly, also killing his guru in the process. Here, too, in the name of protecting Dharma, the very people who were supposed to live Dharma and hand it over to the next generation were all going to be destroyed. Arjuna was anguished and amazed that all the Pandavas could have armed themselves to fight such a war. Thus he asked, "How could we have decided to do anything so insensible?" In Arjuna's perception, this war would not protect the Dharma. It was also very clear to him that the result of this battle would definitely not give him any happiness in this lifetime. Nor did he see any kind of heaven for himself after death, because to destroy the entire Kuluk Dharma was an act of sin. More than that, for the rest of his life, he would have to live with the thought that he had destroyed all these people. Therefore, there would neither be Drishtafala nor Adrishtafala in such an action. Since this was Arjuna's view, he did not understand how Krishna could say that he was frightened. He went on to explain that the people standing there were not unknown to him. They were his own people, people for whom he had the greatest respect and reverence. Unless he killed people like Bhishma and Drona, there would be no question of his gaining victory. In addition, if they were destroyed, assuming that Arjuna was going to destroy them, what kind of happiness would he possibly have? He had to live with the thought that he had destroyed those that he revered the most, those from whom he had learned all that he knew. "How can I send arrow for arrow against them?" he asked Krishna. Even if Krishna had argued that Bhishma and Drona did not seem to have the same concern for him, Arjuna did not feel that he was in a position to make any such judgment. Their choosing to fight against him may have been wrong, but at the same time they no doubt had their own logic for doing so. Because of his respect and reverence for these two stalwarts, Arjuna did not feel that he had the right to say anything about their decision to support Duryodhana. The point he was making to Krishna was that he himself could not sin by exchanging arrows with them. He would rather die than draw the arrow that would destroy Drona and Bhishma, his teachers. He therefore told Krishna that he, Arjuna, did not know the meaning of fear, as was very well known to Krishna. A brave man can be sympathetic, but a coward who is sympathetic has a problem, because the sympathy ends in distress. This kind of sympathy is of no use, whereas when a resourceful, courageous, skillful person is sympathetic, the sympathy can be useful to the other person. A brave man should be sympathetic. So too, a rich man should be magnanimous, and a knowledgeable man humble. Knowledge and humility, money and magnanimity, power and justice, and strength and gentleness. These go together. A person only having one of these two attributes, such as power or strength, without the justice or gentleness that goes with it, is capable of destroying others. Arjuna was a brave man, a courageous man, and a mature person. A mature person can be sympathetic. A problem arises, however, when there is confusion. Arjuna's confusion was that of a mature person. Vedanta cannot be taught to an immature person. Instead, he or she can be taught something else, something that will
Sorry,
resolve
1 second. Yeah.
a particular problem. A mature person can be taught Vedanta, thereby solving the problem more fundamentally. This is where the Gita comes in, as we will see. Arjuna presented his case beautifully. Krishna destroyed demons and enemies, but here those who were to be destroyed were Arjuna's teachers and relatives. Drona was a teacher who was not against Arjuna in any way. The only problem was that he was a child to Duryodhana because of all the help he had received from him. Bhishma was also a child for the same reason. This did not mean, however, that they were against Arjuna. Perceiving this particular situation properly, Arjuna told Krishna, "Destroying demons and enemies as you have done is right, but destroying one's teachers is not right." It was fine that Krishna was known as the destroyer of demons, Madhusudana. However, Arjuna definitely did not want to be known as a destroyer of teachers, Guru Sudana. Therefore, in the next verse, he said it would be better for him to live on alms than to kill his gurus.
Awesome. Thank you, Pranati. So just one quick note, my Guruji used to say this, very funnily. A man comes to visit another, his friend, and he keeps talking about this somebody who cheated him, and he keeps going on how he got cheated, how the other person is so bad, and he'll bore this host to death with all of this craziness that he doesn't even want to hear. And any clues the host is giving him that he should just stop venting now, he wouldn't even get those, because he's just getting something out of his system, and just but he doesn't realize that he is now dumping all of that on this person that is not even related to the situation. And my Guruji used to say, even if the person says, 1 second, I there I have to attend to this phone call, or let me just get a glass of water, the person who is going through that situation doesn't realize that he's boring the other person. So the person goes for getting a glass of water, comes back, and this guest will say, "Huh, where am I? Kahan hu main?" Or and then he'll start again. So here, that's what Arjuna is going through, that venting mode, and he's continuing to try to explain his scenario, though Bhagwan is saying, "Get up and move on." But in the next two slokas, he will realize. So we have completed 4, 5 and 6. 5, he will still go through the same mode, and 6, a little bit, he's just changing his mood. And 7th sloka is very critically important, where the transition happens from discovering, he's still going through his problem, right? And now he will go to surrender to Krishna in sloka 7. With this, we'll conclude here, and we'll catch up next week. So I'll conclude with a short prayer. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु Sarvam Srimanarayana Charanaravindarpanamastu. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you in next week.
Thank you,
Thank
Sriji.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reji. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.